I'd like you, each one of you, to describe your district briefly. And as of this week, whether you're in seat, online, if there's a hybrid, what your school community has chosen and how many are opting to come back. So if I could start with you, Rich and Troy.
Sure, absolutely. So in Troy, we're in our hybrid model right now, which for us is 5 days at the elementary and 4 days for all students wishing to take part in in-seat instruction at the secondary level, so 6-12. Approximately 60% of families in Troy have chosen to remain virtual, which means there are 40% total of about 40% of families choosing to be in seat. About 50% of those at the elementary level, about 40% at middle school, and about 30% at the high school level. So we are fortunate to have those that wish to be in seat for a good portion of the week in Troy.
Okay, Mark, give us an idea of what's happening in Woodhaven-Brownstown School District, what your situation is right now, and what the community has decided in terms of opting in.
Certainly. Beginning in September, we offered our parents and our students a choice. 60% chose to come to school on a daily basis, grades K through 12. 40% chose to be fully remote. And we've been able to do that successfully since, with the exception of the November pause. When high school students were paused, we also paused in-person education for grades K through 8 as well. Right before winter break and the 2 weeks after winter break, we brought all of our students back in a every other day schedule, what we call our safe start, to bring kids back gradually. But right now, for the last 3 weeks, we've had right back at that 60% in person every day and 40% remote. We've offered our parents the opportunity to change their mind at card marking breaks. And each time we come to a transition, we get about 50-50. You know, we get about an equal number that want to come in person as we do that want to transition to remote. And one of the things that we think is unique about the program that we've offered is all of our students are being taught directly by Woodhaven-Brownstown School District teachers. So even our remote students, we have a very limited class size. We stick to it, and we do that so that their transition back into the classroom can be as seamless as possible.
You know, it's interesting to see the numbers, you know, flipped in the two districts that we're talking about, which really just goes to the point that each district is making individual choices that services the people in their district, and that's right for them. And that's what's so difficult, I think, when you talk across the board change or across the board, policies that you need to have in place, that it is so individualized to different districts and different demographic areas. Mike, let's talk about Macomb. Give us an overview county-wise about where you are in terms of in-seat, online, or combination.
Yeah, just for your listeners' information, we have 22 districts, including the ISD here within the county, about 130,000 students, give or take. So we have, if I can just start with the ISD with our special needs students, we've been in person since September 8th, but with an option of parents to choose remote. And then the other 21 districts, we're pretty much have all options on the table. We've got some districts that have 15% remote and others at 50. But of the 22 districts, and just last past couple of weeks, Chippewa and Utica have started their programs. So the majority of our districts are in-person education options. And I think that we've learned a lot from it, and our parents appreciate it.
And so, Alesia, when we look at all of this and we hear from different districts across the area, you know, we're getting some questions from people who are in our town hall right now. Our superintendents, our districts and ISDs is sharing within the counties about what they're doing across the area, saying, this is working for us, this isn't working for us, and looking at a shared set of data?
Absolutely, Christy. One of the things that we've done since the school closure last spring, we meet, last spring we were almost meeting daily with our 21 superintendents throughout Macomb County to do exactly what you're describing. And we've continued to meet. Now it's about weekly, it's at least once a week, But if something surfaces, we meet even more frequently if we feel we come together, that we need to come together. And we're having those exact conversations. The superintendents report the status of where they are in terms of their instructional delivery and talk about what's going well or things to consider as you transition. Because as Superintendent Devault mentioned, with a county the size of Macomb County, we have a variety of options that are occurring. But each of our districts almost all of our districts do have at least an in-person option. And what has been critical that we've heard from both Dr. Machesky and Mr. Gerhardt as well is that that survey piece in terms of getting input from families and needing to be nimble and flexible. Because as we've navigated, just this unknown territory with all of us regarding the pandemic, our goal is to best meet our students and families' needs, and having their voice about, where they are and their situations has been critical.
Would you welcome, let me start with you, Rich, would you welcome, and we're getting this question coming in right now, centralized decision-making coming down from the state? Or do you believe that the autonomy that the districts have is in the best interest of what you're doing right now?
What we've talked about in Oakland County, and we talked about this from the very beginning of the pandemic, is what we really wanted to see from the state were more clear guidance around what is considered safe and what is not. What are those thresholds that we should be looking at as a community? Because we're not health officers. So if you could provide us thresholds that we should be considering as to when it's safe and when it may not be safe, that's all we would really want at the state level, and then allow us at the local level to make those decisions based upon the needs within our community.
Mark, I came up with a list of questions, and I could talk to you guys forever, but I keep seeing the word challenge on my list of questions. Like, what are the challenges? What are the challenges? Let me ask you, what has gone right during this entire process? And then what has been your biggest challenge?
Choice has been what's gone right. That's enabled us to try to provide support that can best meet the needs of the students. The students that we listened to earlier, hearing their anxiety just really hit me, and it only starts to scratch the surface. So if I transition into challenges ahead for us, or challenges that we've experienced, and then the challenges ahead for us are having the resources and support that we need to address not just learning loss, but also the social emotional impact that the pandemic has had on our students. And that needs to start sooner rather than later.
Well, let's get to the learning loss. There is a recent poll from Education Trust Midwest that came out. 85% of parents say state leaders should have a plan to address pandemic learning loss and make sure kids are back on grade level. Alesia, let me go to you. How extensive do you believe the learning loss is? How can you measure it? And what plans are you working on in Macomb with Mike to address this?
Our local districts have the opportunity. They've administered local assessments, and so they've had the opportunity to look at and see where some of the learning loss is occurring, where some of the gaps are. A little surprisingly, but this is reflective in some recent national data that we saw as well. We see a larger gap in mathematics than in reading as we were digging into some of our data. But districts are already talking and beginning to put plans in place to address that. In our county, we already offered a pretty robust, summer learning opportunities for students. And we've begun planning even earlier for that. And so that students can have the opportunity to catch up on some of the learning that has been disrupted this year.
Rich, let me ask you, let's talk a little bit about safety and funding. Do you believe that you have the funding necessary to make sure that your schools are safe when kids roll back in, whenever the vaccine rollout gets up and going and we have more of the community vaccinated?
I think I will give the state credit from the perspective of they have attempted to make funds available as quickly as possible. I think we will continue to need more funds for things such as hiring counselors, for social workers, individuals to address, to your point, the social emotional well-being of the students within our community, because that's going to last well down. I mean, PPE will go away. that those components are going to last well into the years, several years down the road. So I don't think there's enough funding with respect to making sure that we can retain individuals like that. The other key is giving us flexibility, use the spending or the monies where we see fit. Every community is different. What Macomb may need, it may be different than what we need in some areas in Oakland. So having the resources, but having the flexibility to spend those resources where we most need them is also extremely important.